On my anniversary, I waited at the restaurant for 4 hours, but no one came. I finally texted the group chat, and my sister replied, "We did dinner without you. You always make it about yourself." I didn't reply. I just posted a photo with my coworker's cake, balloons, and a caption, "Best anniversary ever." That's when my dad called, screaming that I embarrassed the family. I, 32M, sat in the corner booth at Romano's, checking my watch for the 100th time. For hours. For fucking hours I'd been waiting at our family's traditional anniversary dinner spot. The waiter had stopped asking if I wanted to order, probably assuming I'd been stood up on a date. The irony wasn't lost on me. My wife had died in a car accident exactly 2 years ago today. Sarah. Even thinking her name hurt. The family dinner was supposed to be our way of honoring her memory, something we'd started last year when the grief was still raw enough that none of us knew how else to cope. I pulled out my phone and opened the family group chat. My hands were shaking slightly as I typed, "Hey everyone, I'm still at Romano's. Did something happen?" The response came faster than I expected. My sister's message appeared on the screen, and I felt my stomach drop. "We did dinner without you. You always make it about yourself." I stared at the phone screen until the words blurred. Make it about myself? Sarah was my wife. Today was the anniversary of the day she died. How was grieving my dead wife making it about myself? I didn't respond. Instead, I paid for my untouched coffee and walked out into the parking lot. The November air was bitter, matching my mood perfectly. At work the next morning, I must have looked like hell because my coworker Mike asked if I was okay. I found myself explaining the whole situation. The missed dinner, my sister's text, the complete radio silence from the rest of the family afterward. Mike shook his head in disbelief. He suggested we grab drinks after work, maybe invite a few other people from the office. Make it a proper celebration of Sarah's life, he said. She would have wanted me to be surrounded by people who actually cared. That evening, 6 of my coworkers showed up at the local pub. They'd brought a cake. Nothing fancy, just a sheet cake from the grocery store with "In Memory of Sarah" written in blue frosting. Someone had grabbed balloons. Lisa from accounting had even printed out a few photos of Sarah from my social media posts. For the first time in weeks, I actually smiled. These people barely knew Sarah, had only heard me mention her in passing, yet they'd gone out of their way to help me honor her memory. Meanwhile, my own family couldn't be bothered to show up to a dinner they'd helped plan. I took a photo of the table, the cake, the balloons, my coworkers raising their glasses in a toast. Without thinking too hard about it, I posted it to Facebook with the caption, "Best anniversary ever." Surrounded by people who truly understand what family means. The responses started immediately. Likes, heart reactions, comments from friends and extended family members expressing their love and support. People who'd known Sarah commenting about how proud she'd be to see me surrounded by such caring friends. Then my phone rang. Dad's name flashed on the screen, and I hesitated before answering. When I did pick up, his voice was already raised before I could say hello. He was screaming about how I'd embarrassed the entire family. How I'd made them look bad on social media by posting about my coworkers after they'd invited me to a family dinner. How I was being dramatic and attention-seeking. I let him rant for a full minute before I interrupted him. I told him I'd waited at Romano's for 4 hours. Alone. On the anniversary of my wife's death. While they apparently had dinner somewhere else without bothering to tell me. There was silence on the other end of the line. Dad's voice became quieter, almost defensive. He explained that my sister had said I'd canceled. That I'd told her I couldn't make it because of work. I felt something cold settle in my chest. I asked him to repeat what he'd just said. He repeated it, and I could hear the uncertainty creeping into his voice. My sister had told the entire family that I'd bowed out of dinner. Had said I was too busy with work commitments to attend. I told Dad I'd never canceled anything. Had never spoken to my sister about missing dinner. In fact, I'd been looking forward to it all week because I'd been dreading spending the anniversary alone. The silence stretched between us for nearly 30 seconds. When Dad spoke again, his voice was different. Smaller. He asked if I was sure I hadn't canceled. I was sure. Absolutely certain. We hung up without saying goodbye. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. The family group chat was exploding with activity. Mom, Dad, my brother, my sister, aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone was weighing in. My sister was adamant that I'd canceled. She'd screenshot our text conversation from 3 days earlier, where I'd asked about the restaurant's address. She claimed this was proof that I'd then called her and canceled. but there was no record of any phone call between us. I checked my call log, asked her to check hers. Nothing. My brother, who'd always been the peacekeeper, suggested we all just move past it. Said it was probably a misunderstanding and that arguing wouldn't bring Sarah back. That's when I snapped. I typed out a long message explaining exactly how I'd spent the anniversary evening, sitting alone in a restaurant for 4 hours, waiting for family that never came. How I'd felt abandoned on one of the hardest days of my life. How my coworkers, people who barely knew me, had shown me more compassion and support than my own family. I ended the message with a simple statement. I was taking a break from family gatherings until people could figure out how to treat me with basic decency. Then I left the group chat. Update 1. 3 days passed in relative peace. I threw myself into work, picked up extra projects, stayed late at the office. It felt good to focus on something concrete, something I could control. Then Mom showed up at my apartment. She was crying before I even opened the door fully. She pushed past me into the living room and immediately started apologizing. She said she'd been calling my sister repeatedly, demanding the truth about what happened. According to Mom, my sister had finally admitted that I'd never canceled. She'd made the whole thing up because she was angry with me about something else entirely. I asked what she could possibly be angry about. Mom's face crumpled. Apparently, my sister had been expecting me to ask her to help plan Sarah's memorial dinner. When I'd handled all the arrangements myself, the reservation, the timing, everything, she'd felt excluded, left out of something she thought she should have been involved in. So instead of talking to me about feeling excluded, she decided to exclude me from the dinner entirely. Had told everyone I'd canceled, then convinced herself that I deserved it because I never included family in important decisions anyway. I stared at Mom, trying to process what I'd just heard. My sister had sabotaged the memorial dinner for my dead wife because her feelings were hurt that I hadn't asked for her help planning it. Mom was still crying, begging me to forgive my sister, saying that she was young and had made a mistake. That family was all we had left, especially after losing Sarah. I told Mom that Sarah's family had never treated me this way. That Sarah's parents had called me on the anniversary just to check in and make sure I wasn't alone. That Sarah's sister had sent flowers to my office with a note about how much Sarah had loved me. Mom looked stricken. She asked what she could do to fix this. I told her I didn't know if it could be fixed. That my sister hadn't just hurt my feelings, she deliberately sabotaged one of the most important days of my year. Had let me sit alone in a restaurant on the anniversary of my wife's death because she was having a tantrum about not being included in the planning. Mom left 20 minutes later, promising to talk to my sister about making this right. Update 2. My sister never called, never texted, never apologized. Instead, she started a whisper campaign. I found out through my cousin that my sister had been telling extended family members that I was going through a difficult time and saying hurtful things about family. She'd positioned herself as the victim, claiming I was lashing out at everyone because of my grief. The worst part was that some people were buying it. My aunt called to suggest I consider therapy. My uncle sent me information about grief counseling groups. Everyone was treating me like I was having some kind of breakdown instead of acknowledging that my sister had deliberately sabotaged Sarah's memorial. That's when I decided I was done playing nice. I wrote out the entire story, everything that had happened, with timestamps and screenshots where possible. The 4-hour wait at the restaurant. My sister's lie about me canceling. Her admission to Mom about why she'd really done it. The way she was now spinning the story to make herself look like the victim. I posted it to Facebook, tagged every family member who'd been in that group chat, and included the photo from my coworker's impromptu memorial. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Sarah's friends and family commented with support and outrage. My coworkers liked and shared the post. Extended family members who'd been getting my sister's version of events suddenly understood what had really happened. But the most surprising response came from my brother. He called me that evening and admitted he'd known something was off about my sister's story from the beginning. Said he'd tried to call me the night of the dinner, but had gotten my voicemail. When he'd asked my sister about it, she'd been evasive and defensive. He apologized for not pushing harder for the truth at the time. Said he'd been trying to keep the peace, but realized he'd been enabling my sister's behavior instead. My brother also revealed something I hadn't known. This wasn't the first time my sister had pulled something like this. She'd lied about other family members in the past when she felt slighted or excluded. Usually small things, but this pattern of manipulative behavior had been going on for years. He was tired of it too. Update 3. The Facebook post reached my sister within hours. Her response was swift and predictably dramatic. She called me repeatedly, leaving increasingly frantic voicemails. When I didn't answer, she showed up at my apartment at nearly midnight, pounding on the door and demanding I let her in. I opened the door but didn't invite her inside. She immediately launched into a screaming match, accusing me of trying to destroy her reputation and turn the family against her. I let her rant for several minutes before I responded. I told her she'd destroyed her own reputation by lying and manipulating people, that I'd simply told the truth about what happened. She tried to justify her actions again, claiming she'd felt excluded and hurt. Said she'd only lied to the family because she thought I didn't want her involved in Sarah's memorial. I asked her why she hadn't just talked to me about feeling excluded instead of sabotaging the entire dinner. Why she'd let me sit alone for 4 hours instead of having an adult conversation about her feelings. She didn't have an answer for that. I told her that Sarah had always said the hardest part about marrying me was watching how my family treated each other. The manipulation, the drama, the way we'd all learned to hurt each other instead of communicating directly. Sarah had been right, and I was done participating in it. I told my sister that if she wanted any relationship with me going forward, she needed to take responsibility for what she'd done. Not justify it, not make excuses, not play the victim. Just acknowledge that she'd deliberately hurt me on one of the hardest days of my life and apologize for it. She left without apologizing. 2 weeks later, I got a text from her. A simple message: "I'm sorry. I was wrong. Can we talk?" I thought about it for 3 days before responding. We met for coffee at a neutral location. She looked awful, tired, stressed, like she hadn't been sleeping well. She apologized again, more thoroughly this time. Admitted she'd been jealous of my relationship with Sarah, even after Sarah's death. Said she'd always felt like I prioritized my marriage over family relationships, and Sarah's death hadn't changed that feeling. The memorial dinner had felt like another example of me shutting family out of important moments. Instead of talking to me about it, she'd decided to punish me for it. She acknowledged how cruel and selfish her actions had been. Said she'd been in therapy since our confrontation, trying to understand why she'd thought hurting me was an acceptable response to feeling excluded. I listened to everything she said. Then I told her I appreciated the apology, but I wasn't ready to trust her again yet. That rebuilding our relationship would take time, and she'd have to prove through her actions that she was committed to changing. She agreed. Said she understood and would do whatever it took. That was 6 months ago. We've been taking things slowly, occasional coffee dates, family gatherings where we're polite but not close. She's been consistent about respecting my boundaries and hasn't tried to manipulate situations or play victim when things don't go her way. Last week, on what would have been Sarah's birthday, my sister sent flowers to my office. The card simply said, "Thinking of you and Sarah today." It was a small gesture, but it felt genuine. Like maybe she was finally learning to think about someone else's feelings instead of just her own. I'm not sure we'll ever be close again the way we were before. The trust she broke was fundamental. She deliberately caused me pain on one of the most difficult days of my life, then tried to gaslight me about it afterward. But I'm willing to see if she can prove she's changed. Sarah would have wanted me to give family a second chance, as long as they were genuinely trying to do better. The coworkers who threw that impromptu memorial, they're still some of my closest friends. Mike and I grab drinks every few weeks, and Lisa always remembers Sarah's birthday and our anniversary. They showed me what real support looks like during the worst period of my life. Sometimes the family you choose is more important than the family you're born into. I learned that lesson the hard way, sitting alone in that restaurant for 4 hours. But I also learned that there are people out there who will show up for you, even when your own blood relatives won't. That's a lesson worth remembering.